Welcome, I am Captain Matt here with BoatBuyersSecretWeapon.com, where we're committed to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the perfect boat at the lowest possible price for years and years of boating fun, because life truly is better on a boat. Today, we're talking drive types, jet boats, stern drives, outboards, inboards, and which is right for you. We're going to get right to the point of each of these. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each type of engine to help you figure out which might be the best power system, propulsion system, and at the end we've got a free offer for you. You can visit more information at BoatBuyersSecretWeapon.com. Let's first talk about each type so that you can avoid confusion. Now there's another video called First Time Boat Buyers where we get into boat types. This is propulsion types. Up in the top left, the red hull is a jet boat. You can see there it looks very much like a jet ski, like a wave runner or a personal watercraft. There's no propeller. There's actually an impeller, which is inside that unit. You can't see it. On the top right, that's a stern drive. The black thing hanging off the lower portion of the boat, that's a Mercruiser stern drive. You'll see those offered by Mercury. Mercruiser and Volvo Penta are the two main manufacturers in the US and Canada. That propulsion system has the engine inside the boat and the stern drive on the outside. It's called a stern drive. It's called an inboard, outboard, or an IO, because part of the engine's in the boat, part of the drive is out of the boat. The next on the bottom left, that is a inboard boat. It's actually a V drive where the motor sits in the boat. There's a shaft that comes forward from the motor and then V's out and goes reverse back to the propeller, and that propeller turns, runs across that rudder, and that's how the boat steers. That's an inboard. This is a gasoline inboard, most popular on towboats. You can see these type of boats will have a fin typically in the middle of the boat to help with straight tracking, and then we have the outboard, which you'll see that Evinrude E-Tech. That is one of the major manufacturers in the outboard world. You've got Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, Honda, Evinrude. Torpedo does an electric outboard, but you can see that engine hangs off the transom of the boat. Everything is contained in that single unit, and it hangs off the back of the boat. So those are the basics of each one. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of each particular type. Outboards, the pros. A lot of pros with the outboards, especially the newer ones. And when I talk about outboards, I'm going to try to talk about some of the older models. The technology has come a long way in the last 5, 10, 7 years or so. The maintenance. The maintenance is much easier on the outboards. The outboard engines are designed for the marine environment from the ground up. The power heads, the propulsion system, the foot, everything is designed for the marine environment. Everything is self-contained. You pop off the cowling, which is the top portion that kind of covers everything and keeps it waterproof. You pop that off and you have 360-degree access to everything on that boat or on that motor. They're more efficient in most cases. Again, the newer models of the 4-strokes have gotten very efficient. Even the 2-strokes that are still on the market, Evinrude is still pushing the 2-stroke technology. Most others are getting out of it, but they're highly efficient as far as fuel efficiency in most bands of the RPM spectrum, okay? They're quieter, especially the newer models. The quiet, some of them you can barely even tell they're running. I say newer models because some of the older outboards are very loud, not very efficient, but the newer technology has gotten very strong, very reliable, because they're made specifically for the marine environment, because the technology, the standards, the specs have gotten very tight, very stringent. They're extremely reliable, a very inexpensive cost of ownership, again, in most cases. Like anything mechanical, the way it's been taken care of if you buy something used will have a major impact on the cost of ownership and the maintenance required. But a brand new engine that's taken care of the right way has a very long lifespan, 1,000, 1,500 hours easy if it's well taken care of. You'll even find boats that are charter boats or fire truck, fire boats or police boats that are very precisely maintained are getting 2,000, 3,000 hours on them, but it's all about how they're maintained. They're easier to maintain in the saltwater environments because they're designed for the marine environment, and because of their structure where they suck the water in and up to cool, and then gravity drains that water out. All you need to do is flush it with fresh water, and that cleans it all out just naturally. They're easy to winterize and run year round, again, just because of that gravity factor that sucks the water up in to cool the engine, and then gravity drains it right back out. So if you want to run it in December, all you need to do is make sure it's tilted back down and let all of that water run out, and you don't have the freezing issues like you do with stern drives, inboard, outboards, and inboard engines, and even jet engines, but they're pretty easy too. We'll get to that. They have a better power to weight ratio on the newer models. Again, because of the efficiencies, because of the new technology, they're getting a lot of power out of a very lightweight engine. So you're saving several hundred pounds compared to a stern drive engine in a lot of cases. And that difference is made up, the performance difference gets made up because of that extra weight drop from the outboards. They also give you more cockpit space because everything is hanging off the back of the boat. You have more space for storage, interior seating. So that relates there. They're typically deliver a smaller wake because you have less weight at the back of the boat versus an inboard versus a stern drive. It's gonna displace less water, and it's gonna put out a smaller wake on a similar boat. And they also have a shallower draft, which means you can get into a little bit shallower, skinnier water if you're doing some fishing. The cons is they block the access to the water at the stern of the boat. You can see the swim platform there, that you've got that motor well that you've got to have to do the mounts and to have all the cabling. So that's in the way, and then you just have your swim platform off the back. But a third of that space is taken up by the engine and the engine well. They have a little bit less torque. Now again, because of the weight difference between the stern drive motor and the outboard motor, it's getting less of an issue. And they can be easier stolen because they're just hanging off the back, especially the smaller ones, kicker motors and things like that. They can be popped right off, cut the cabling, and they can be stolen. Not a major issue, but it is a con in some areas, specifically in Florida. They have a bigger issue with that. So let's talk about stern drives. The pros of stern drive. I grew up stern drives. I love stern drives. Personally, the pros: easy access to the water because you can have your swim platform. That stern drive, that lower unit is tucked up under. Typically, especially on newer boats, the swim platforms are coming out even further, and that is, you almost don't even notice it's there. It allows a full beam swim platform, so the full width of the boat, you have that swim platform, easy access to the water. On the inside, you've got that motor sitting inside. It's usually a little lower in the boat, so you can have a big sun pad across the back. The configurations that you can do with the stern drive engines give you more interior space. You have more torque compared to the outboard. We talked about that because there's typically more horsepower coming from the engines, more torque in most cases. That motor's tucked away. In my opinion, the aesthetics are better. Again, this is what I grew up with. So you don't have that outboard hanging off the back. Our first boat was an outboard. When we moved into the stern drive for a second boat, it was so much nicer as a kid. You could jump off the back of the boat. You didn't have to worry about that outboard hanging off, getting in the way. So in my opinion, the aesthetics are better. And it's also better at handling very rough water because it's got a deeper draft. You can tilt that lower unit all the way down, and you get a better grab of the prop in the water. Those are the pros of the stern drive. The cons: they're more expensive cost of ownership. The maintenance is more expensive. The winterization process is more extensive because you have to. The water comes up and into the boat, and gravity doesn't get it all out. And if you don't address that, it'll freeze, expand, and it'll crack. It'll crack the block, and that's a very, very expensive repair, from $6,000 to $10,000 depending on the engine. You can't trim it out of the water completely. So one of the things with the outboard powers, you can trim those all the way up and get almost everything out of the water depending on how it's hung. On the stern drive, no matter what, they're going to be submerged under the water. So that means more corrosion. That means in the salt water, they may get barnacles. In some environments, that's a major, major issue. If you trailer boat and you're always pulling it out, it's not that big of a deal. But if you leave your boat in the water, it can certainly make a difference. They're tougher and more expensive to maintain in salt water. Again, just like the winterization, it sucks the water up and in, and then that salt just stays in there. And even when you flush it out, it can still cause some issues because the engines, the actual motor in a stern drive, is actually just a GM, a General Motors block that's been marinized by the two different companies in the states that do it, Mercruiser and Volvo. So they just marinize it and get it ready for the environment. But the engine itself is made to go in an automobile. So the saltwater environment is very, very tough on the stern drive engines. They're great options for freshwater lake bow riders and deck boats. If you're a trailer boater, if you're in freshwater, they're a great option. I love them, but that's the environment and the type of boating that I do. But they're becoming less and less of the marketplace. And the most recent numbers I have from the industry, fiberglass stern drives 14 to 30 feet makes up about less than a tenth, about 8% of the marketplace. So they're going down, those stern drives in most segments. Now the jet boat. Jet boats are taking a portion of that stern drive business. The people are going towards jet boats. There's a lot of advantages. Excellent access to the water because of the propulsion system. Just like the stern drive, you've got that little jet drive hanging off the back. It's very small. It allows that full beam swim platform. The motors, because these motors are designed to go in jet skis, they're specifically designed for that application. They're very low profile. They get tucked away easily, and they allow more cockpit interior space as well as easier access to the water, and in some cases better access than stern drives. Better aesthetics, again, in my opinion, not having that motor hanging off the back. They look awesome. Yamaha does a great job with their swim platform access, that you get great access to the water. If you go to the sandbar, if you just hang out at the back of your boat at anchor, they're incredible. Very shallow draft. You can see you don't have that stern drive sticking down. You only have a couple of inches with that little rudder that's on the newer type models in the last 3 to 5, maybe 7 years, depending on when you're watching this. That shallow draft allows you to get into shallower water, get closer into the sandbar or on the beach without having to drag your lower unit. Very quick acceleration and turning ability. They're very sporty and fun to drive. Some will say they're safer. There's no propeller down there. The impeller is actually inside that sucks the water up through and spits it out the back for the propulsion. So there's no propeller. That makes them safer when you're around the boat. There's no prop to get cut on. Easy to maintain in saltwater environment. Again, they're based off the jet ski engine, and you can fire them up and you can just blow all that water out. Some of them, they'll have flush valves. You hook it up to a garden hose and you just blow all that out. And because they're designed for the marine environment, you don't have some of the same issues you do with the stern drive, and a very simple winterization process. Again, you can just blow that water out with the way the engines are designed, rev it up a couple times, and turn it off, and you don't have to worry about freezing. Now, cons. There are some cons on the jet boat side. They run at very high RPM compared to stern drives and outboards, which means that the motor is working harder. It's under more stress as you're running that boat. The noise level, it's a little bit louder, or they've gotten a lot better with some of the sound dampening things that they're doing in the newer models, but the older models are much louder. It's also louder because it's a higher pitch. Because the engine runs at a higher RPM, because they're using those jet ski wave runner engines, it's a different sound, and it's a higher pitch sound, and it's typically noisier than compared certainly to an outboard and even to a stern drive. The vibration levels, again, because of that higher RPM, there's more vibration that comes from that. They can also suck up seaweeds or ski ropes with that intake. That the way their propulsion system works is probably a couple feet ahead of what you're seeing now, that jet drive. There's a water intake. It sucks water in from about a little bit past the midpoint of the boat, midship, sucks the water in an import, and it shoots it out the back for the propulsion through that impeller system and shoots out the back. And you can suck up seaweeds, you can suck up rocks, you can suck up ropes, and they can get stuck in there, and you have to be able to get them out. Some of them have access ports, some of the older ones do not, but it can be an issue. Slow water maneuvering. They've gotten a lot better in the recent years, 2019 as I record this, but in slow water, because you don't have that big rudder, because you don't have that big external prop that's kind of pushing water in the direction that you want it to go, you're just shooting out of water. If you're not shooting out much water and you're going very slow, you lose a little bit of control. They've added that rudder, which you see down at the just under the kind of that gray thing right there, if you can see my cursor. They've added that on the newer models. It's an add-on that you can add on to the Yamaha boats. I believe some of the other jet boats are doing it as well to improve it. And it's also maneuvering in reverse is more difficult because, again, you don't have the way the drive works. You don't have that big rudder. You don't have that big prop that's helped moving you when you're in reverse. So those are some of the cons. Where they're excellent, they're great options for sandbars, for families, and for speed lovers. If you're into speed, if you're into sporty, if you like motorcycles and you love jet skis and you like ripping around, this is a great option for you. But there certainly are some considerations if you're in an area that has a lot of seaweed. If you're sensitive to the vibration and to sound, that can be some negatives. So again, make sure you run the boat through the demo maneuverings that we talk about in some of our other videos, and in our boat buyer's toolkit. The checklist that you have will help you kind of figure out, are these cons that we're going to be happy with, are these cons that we need to avoid it. Next is the inboard. Now, I'm not talking diesel inboards, which is for bigger boats. I'm talking gas inboards, which are typically going to be on tow boats. The advantages: excellent torque. They will get a wakeboarder, water skier out of the water in a snap. They get up, they get going very quickly. They excel at water sports. If you say, we're going to do wake surfing, wakeboarding, water skiing consistently 80-90% of the time, I'm going to say look at an inboard. Clear transom for tow ropes. As you can see, the motor's inside the boat. Talked about how on this is a V-drive example I'm showing you. There's a shaft that comes forward from the motor, comes out the back of the boat and down into the water at an angle, and you've got a big old prop back there that runs over a rudder that keeps the transom of the boat clear. There's no stern drive hanging off the back. There's no outboard hanging off there. All you have is that propeller, which is tucked way under the boat. It's clean for tow ropes. It's much more difficult to get a tow rope tangled up in an engine setup like this. It's possible. It's still possible to do, but it's easier to keep it away because that back is clear and the propeller is under the boat. So you've got the safety factor that unless you're screwing around under the boat, you're not going to have to worry about that propeller with your kids because it's tucked about 1.5 feet, 2 feet back from the transom of the boat. Cons: they're more expensive cost of ownership. These engines, because of the torque, because of the way they work, they typically need oil changes more often. They need to be winterized just like a stern drive. It's sucking water in, up into the engine to cool it. That needs to be drained out. You have freezing, so the winterization process is more intensive and more expensive. There's no trim. That shaft is in a stationary position. The rudder's is just going to shift back and forth. There's no way to adjust the angle of attack of the boat, which means you can't rise that bow up to get up out of the chop and give yourself a smoother ride. So because you can't adjust the trim like you can on an outboard, like you can on a stern drive, it's a rougher ride. It also handles differently, especially at slow speeds and in reverse. Now, I don't say it's more difficult because it's not necessarily more difficult, but it's just different than if you've driven a stern drive and outboard because you you don't have anything turning. The thrust is going straight back. The only thing that's going to turn the boat is the use of that rudder. So when you're at slow speeds, there's less water going past that rudder to adjust the way the boat maneuvers. When you're in reverse, there's no water really going across that rudder with any speed, so it handles much differently. But these are great options if you're doing water sports. There's nothing better than a towboat to do serious water sports. You can certainly do water sports behind an outboard, behind a stern drive, behind a jet boat. But if you're serious about wakeboarding, wake surfing, water skiing, this V-drive or a direct drive setup for water skiing is going to be the best option. So if you enjoyed this video, we would appreciate you to leave us a comment. If you've got another question that's on your mind, let us know what kind of boat you're shopping for. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up. If you hated the video, you thought it was terrible, give us a thumbs down. If you do give us a thumbs down, leave us a comment. Let us know why so that we can make a better video for next time. And also, we would love it if you subscribe. Just hit that subscribe now button that's in red, and you can subscribe real easy. You can grab our Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit. It's a free resource we give boat buyers at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. Help you find the right boat, demo a boat the right way, questions to ask dealers, private sellers. If you have a trade, how to maximize your trade, talk about boat loans, boat insurance, and much more. Here's a couple videos that are recommended for you that you may want to check out. Again, to subscribe, just click that subscribe now button, and you can also pick up your free copy of the Boat Buyer's Toolkit at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. You can grab that for free. It's an incredible resource. You definitely want to pick it up. You will find it very, very valuable as you look to buy your first or your next boat. Thank you very much. We appreciate you watching. And remember, life truly is better on a boat.